So, Simu Liu in 2014 posted a tweet saying, hey, Marvel, good job with Captain America and Thor. How about putting an Asian guy in one of these action movies? And one of the replies was, I'm just over action movies altogether. We've got this really dark time in human history. People are really going through it. And it feels like all these action movies are just making people more violent. And at first, violence, human history, part of what we all are, part of the culture. But now I'm thinking about it. Do you guys think that action movies are making the public maybe more violent?
I think that action movies make people do dumber violence.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Most of the violence is not physically possible anymore, Kennedy. I guess that's part of what makes it dumb.
No, but like I think you have these people that they think they can throw a punch because they've watched 40 MMA fights and that's their only training, or they watch the new Captain America movie and they're drunk at the bar and they're like, yeah, I got this. And they try to like do like a Captain America style shield throw. And then they remember they don't have a shield and they get kicked in the balls.
From behind.
Yeah.
Because that's where the kicks to the balls come from in street fights. Joe, you're a classically trained boxer. Tell us your experiences with violence and how people treat it.
I mean, normally it's pretty carnal. It feels like a release a lot of the time. And like, in all honesty, it's not about the violence. It's about finding your flow and really enjoying what you're doing.
And can you find your flow if all you've done is watch Marvel movies to learn how to punch?
Listen, Joe, do you feel like if you're sparring with somebody, do you feel like you have an idea of that person's mentality at the end of it? Like, do you feel like there's some sort of personal intimacy and communication? Because I talk to people who are in combat all the time and they say, if I'm spending 5 minutes in a ring with a person, I have a sense of them. There's some sort of spiritual communication that's happening. Do you ever feel that?
Yeah. It's almost like doing a dance with a partner you don't really know. It's a violent dance sometimes. It's not always fun at the end. Like, there's a winner and there's a loser, but like, you got to live with that, whichever happened, like, you move on.
Do you feel like there's a real mutual respect for somebody who's willing to get hit, or have you left and thought that guy was really dumb?
Couple times. Not when I was in the ring with someone. Usually trained boxers have a little bit more of a respect for stuff like that. It's almost an honor to be in the ring with somebody else at certain points. Street fights wise, yeah. And I'd say that I only say that because I've worked security for a bit. Sometime I did not enjoy that work because you have to interact with people who are not rational. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you're not rational in those times because you're getting aggravated and annoyed, and it really it gets under your skin. I don't really know. I feel like I've seen good fighters and bad fighters who drink. It always turns out really not a good time for anybody. People lose traction.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
and
interesting.
That's the problem is that, movies don't show it like that a lot. So there are some movies that like will give you kind of a more realistic depiction of like how sloppy and scrappy and just sort of chaotic things like that can be. But really, like, even the ones that try usually don't really come as close to the real thing, which is just like madness. And that's the part that when you watch action movies and you let that kind of fuel your fantasy of what a fight is going to be like, again, I don't think this makes you more violent, but it makes you more likely to think, yes, I'm going to land a perfectly coordinated series of blows, like 6 perfect punches to the chest, and then he'll just fall.
Yeah,
like,
that's too much Tekken. That's too much Tekken. Your guys are going for the air juggles. I think that screen fighting, and we could probably spend a whole episode just talking about fighting for the screen. Screen fighting is incredibly just. In the same way that like conversational scenes, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and what's in the end can kind of be determined by the beginning and the middle. There's like an arc, and when you look back at it, it makes sense. Man, people fighting does not make sense. Shit happens that doesn't make sense in fights all the time.
Even in professional fights, like that's another difference. Is like, it's not like even in a professional fight you really get that perfectly coordinated, like the people are in sync the way you do in like an action movie where Batman is having it out with one of his favorite villains like Bane or somebody, and it's like these people are impossibly in sync with each other. Even a professional fight can devolve into chaos. Like, things can just go ways that you don't expect. And people don't think about stuff like when they're watching an action movie. They don't think about stuff like, oh, what if my pinky toe gets broken in the first minute of the fight? It's not a big deal, but it does actually kind of suck.
What if I'm beating the guy and my pinky toe gets broken at the first round of the fight, and they cancel the fight, and I may have technically won this round, but it's over for me because my foot doesn't work anymore. It happens, and all you've got left is to complain to the press afterwards.
Well, even with that, like the blunt force trauma afterwards, you have to deal with, as well as the brain damage. Sometimes it can affect your mood. There's a lot of weird effects that can happen afterwards, depending on who you are and what you deal with and what your system is.
Joe, go ahead.
Yeah. What? Sorry.
No, I was just saying I was really planning to focus on the lighter side of CTE, and you really brought us down a little bit.
I'm sorry.
Don't start killing the vibe with the real ramifications of people being repeatedly hit in the face. We pay $60 for that.
Yeah, let's watch a TV show where people can get hit in the face any number of times. It's called Cowboy Bebop.
Oh, good segue.
Great segue. We love it.
But really, though, before we even talk about anything else about this show, I will say Cowboy Bebop definitely suffers from the problem of these people can get shot 65 times and then just be back to work in a week.
This was a show that was really all about, and you only really get it when the show is over. So, spoilers for a fucking 20-year-old anime. If you haven't seen Cowboy Bebop yet, they're doing remakes on Netflix. This is like if we're talking about the new Ghostbusters, spoilers for the original Ghostbusters. If you haven't watched this movie from the 1980s, you probably aren't ever going to watch it.
No, it's on there too. The original's on there too on Netflix.
Yeah, you could go watch both right now. So
yeah,
you have no excuse.
Without
that's a free ad, Netflix.
Yeah, pay us. You owe us. Patreon.com/whatever this show is. Let me tell you, the Netflix thing, the original Cowboy Bebop was really a lot about, how do I put this? Longing. It was about if only these characters had been a little bit closer. If only these characters loved each other in the same way that we as an audience loved them, like loved hanging out with them. Most shows that are about teams or groups, whether it's the Avengers or Ocean's 11 or just name a show with a super team, because that's most shows now, because we're all doing cinematic universes and shit.
Danger 5.
Name one. Yeah, anybody.
Power Rangers.
There's an element of fantasy of like, what if I was a part of this team? Because these guys all have a special connection between each other. Even some shit like The Sopranos, that big connection between middle-aged guys or whatever. All mafia movies are like that a little bit. Cowboy Bebop is kind of famous for spinning that on its head. Yeah. Because to the viewer, they are that cool team. And you want to be, be in that world. But the characters there don't quite want to be there. They have too many of their own regrets. They have their own team ups they missed. They have their own fantasies they were a part of. The show on Netflix tries to be like a modern team up show. It's about like them all sharing the detail. And I haven't watched the whole show yet, so maybe they'll stretch this out in a different way. And when we watch the last episodes, we'll feel differently. But the show originally was about like, what if they bonded a little bit more? And the show on Netflix seems to be just doing all of that up front to give them more deep characterization, which is an honest attempt, I guess, but like many remakes, kind of misses the point of the show.
It's complicated. There's some ups and downs, and we're going to talk about all of that. But before we do that, we're just going to remind you real quick what this is. This is Velvet Butcher Shop. It's a brand new show. You can support it on Ko-fi or Patreon, your choice, because I know that some people like one or the other, and fuck it. Choice is the staple of capitalism or something, right?
It really does.
There you go.
It doesn't matter what payment processor you use, as long as there's payment and it's processed.
Tell your friends, subscribe, and we'll be back in 60 seconds.
Let's do it. Is that a Commodore beat?
No, it's actually this was from the YouTube audio library. This was from way deep. We dug deep. We found some gems.
Yeah, the YouTube archive is usually just a bad no place for beats. And songs.
Most of it's just like a MIDI trumpet. Like burp, burp, burp.
Yeah,
and some weird, shit. Yeah. You're just like, what? I don't need this in my life.
I don't know how long we were on there, but maybe it took like 60 seconds.
I'm really surprised. I would say that the average YouTube archive beat sounds like hot dog water tastes, like it's or microwaved ground beef. It's just, is it? I guess it tastes like food, but the back of my mouth is. Ooh. But no, you found something that whips, so congratulations.
Yeah, we got good jams in the comments.
Good jams. Hey, Andrea, how are you doing?
Tuning in.
Yeah, I love to see it.
So Cowboy Bebop, by the way, has some good jams.
It does. It really does.
Like the new soundtrack is a good iteration. That's one solid improvement that you can point to. Just say, yep.
I won't even call it an improvement, but I will say the one very positive that I will say is the soundtrack of the live action is really good. It lives up to the anime. It is really nice.
Yeah,
It
that was
can
one
be in the
part I
same
didn't have
paragraph.
to. I didn't have to have mixed feelings about.
Right. Yeah. So
Except for the
much of
bad
the
one?
rest of it. Boy, I'm only 4 episodes in, and possibly they will get there, but it is fucking shot weird. It looks weird.
I saw a great tweet that was basically like, you're either going, oh, this kind of looks fucked up, or this looks so fucking beautiful, and there's nothing really in between. Like you every shot is either like, I don't know, or it's like some of the ship interiors, you're like, damn, that's so well realized. That really, like, they've brought it to life. It's a lot like the anime, but it's also a little unique, and they're beautiful interiors that like are really well crafted in the way of like an old Star Trek set, like a Deep Space Nine set or something, where it's just that lovingly handcrafted greeble and shit, you know? And some of that's great, but then there's other shots that just look like, what is this? This is like a fucking mess.
Yeah.
I know we're gonna talk about nostalgia a little later, but the number one thing that came off to me was this show is about the adaptation is more about how Cowboy Bebop made you feel than it is about Cowboy Bebop. It's like a cover band. Like, it reminded me of another movie that I watched, like Ghostbusters Afterlife, which everyone is like, it's like JJ Abrams. It's like Super 8. It's like the Super 8 version of Ghostbusters. And like, if you go and you watch the original Ghostbusters, it's a movie about middle management jerks. It's about like small business jerks. Like,
it really is it really is small business tyrants on a rampage.
right. And it's the movie Ghostbusters is almost like a tribute to just those, but it loves those people. Like, it's a movie about those people actually being in charge of something important and a merry band of grifters that actually do save the day. It's almost like a show. I don't know if April has watched Ghostbusters, but it's like an April show. The remake is like, oh, this is where they grifted for the first time. There are extreme close-ups. It's people are running their fingers through cornfields. It's like Interstellar. It's like and if you ever think of a victim of a con going back and like falling in love with the con, that's America right now in some ways. And that's Ghostbusters. And this is a show that's in love with how Cowboy Bebop made you feel as this pivotal anime, But most of the show, if you go back and watch it, is a show about middle age. It's a show about regret. It's a show about a show about people taking the life they have for granted and throwing it away to have a fucking fantasy. And like,
yeah, there's definitely a tonal shift where like John Cho's obviously older than Spike was originally envisioned, and that's not necessarily bad, but it is noticeable. And like Jet is also presented as like, this guy who has like a family that he's somewhat estranged from. And
who told them to do that?
I will say, you're only on episode 4. It gets a little better.
Okay. It does.
With that particular plot line.
All right.
Episodes 3 and 4 are the absolute worst episodes.
They were hard to get through.
Okay.
Hard to watch.
The show falls into an absolute slump around there, but it's never great. It is like a cover band. I really like that analogy that you came up with. It's like a cover band where like sometimes you go to the bar and there's like a pretty decent cover band playing and you're like, I'm gonna write down the name of this cover band. If I see them playing again, I'll come back to this bar on that night maybe because they're actually good enough. It's like that, but it's like it's a cover band.
But then the third or fourth song comes along, and you crumple up that piece of paper and you
Yeah,
throw it.
like I'd rather just listen to the real band. Like you guys.
Yeah, the
doing
first
this-
couple songs they cover like Hype, and then it's like they start playing Hey There Delilah for like song
Oh.
number 4,
Oh.
and you're just like,
Whoa.
oh, what's happening? I don't know
Big
anymore.
jump.
So
Jazz cover of Down with the Sickness. What is this?
have you heard of Richard Cheese, Joe?
Yes.
Richard Cheese, I believe, is from Atlanta, and if Richard Cheese ain't from Atlanta, we're claiming him. So yeah, he does lounge versions of all of these 90s industrial rock hits, and watching him in Army of the Dead was fucking hilarious. Real
Wait.
funny shit.
yeah,
Yeah, no.
Richard Cheese.
His name's Richard Cheese. He's,
Wait.
he's a lounge singer.
I
Okay,
know what
so
the new
yeah.
Cowboy Bebop is. It's that Weezer cover album.
Yes.
It literally just is that Weezer
It's
cover album.
Weezer doing Toto.
Yeah, like Weezer went back and nostalgia'd all over these songs that like inspired them or whatever.
Return.
And you know, that's what this is like it's just like a bunch of people who love Cowboy Bebop just getting together and just jamming and being like, yeah. And so there's like 12 or 11 or however many episodes covers, and some of them are kind of good, some of them are kind of bad, and most of them are just kind of in the middle.
Would we feel different about this if this was like we knew they were gonna, you know, in comics, you know that they're gonna do all of these every 5 or 6 years. You know, like if there's a Batman, like you don't like the Gotham version of Batman, you can wait 5 years and there's gonna be, maybe you'll like Robert Pattinson Batman or Ben Affleck Batman or whatever. Is comic books just being not definitive and everybody knows that? Less pressure than if you knew they were going to try to do this again in 5 years, and you could just would people just be more willing to just enjoy this for what it is if there was no pretense to being definitive?
Yeah, I think so. Because, like, think about, like, the
Maybe.
Star Wars movies now, you know? Like, there's just, like, a new Star Wars movie all the time.
Oof.
And if you don't like some of them, you know that doesn't, like... You could be a Star Wars fan and absolutely hate a few Star Wars films.
I don't know. That episode 9, I'm much less into Star Wars now.
Is this a boundary we want to cross?
I mean, yeah, Joe, do you have a hot Star Wars take? We can touch on
Yeah,
it.
what's your hot Star Wars take,
What's your
Joe?
hot
I
Star
don't
Wars?
have one. I'm a Stargate fan. I'm sorry.
Oh,
You're a
listen.
Stargate fan?
Oh, that is a hot take.
That's a very hot take.
Was the show, do you think that Stargate kept consistent quality throughout? Because what I will say, the positive thing I'll say about Stargate is that it was mostly good, far longer than it should have been.
It was way too long. No, I agree. I think a lot of these are actually way too long. Like, we're kind of relying on old stories and not creating new ones. We're just using an old template, it feels like sometimes. I don't know. I kind of feel iffy on the Star Wars thing because I have a friend who just got into the franchise and she's doing pretty well for herself.
Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty hyped for her. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like Stargate and like, what's the other one? I can't even remember the name of it. Oh, Star Trek. That's it.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more of a Trekkie myself, although I also have divisive opinions about Star Trek because I think Picard is an absolute sack shit waste of space. But yeah, I think, you know, you can be a Star Wars fan. You could be the big Star Wars fan, like no problem, and hate a couple of the movies. Just outright. That's not an issue.
True.
The problem with Cowboy Bebop, I think, in part, is that there is so much pressure because it is this singular thing that they never did anything else with. If they had just made Cowboy Bebop anime movies every like 2 to 5 years between the time of the anime and now, even people would be chiller on all this. You know?
I think people would be bored with it.
That's something. Yeah, that's a good point. Like Star Wars or one of these comic books or whatever, there's a lot more room to just change things entirely. And even the show, I mean, they're just doing Cowboy Bebop. How much tolerance how much patience would people be to see the same thing over and over again? In this show, and part of, when you're doing an adaptation of any work, you do have to, an adaptation is almost like a challenge to the original. And I think that this crew kind of asked for it, because a lot of the adaptational changes they make were very open that they wanted to like fix things that were structurally wrong with the show. Vicious's characterization, Julie, like just a lot of the characters they wanted to add more depth to.
That's not all bad either, I will say, because like when Christina and I watched Cowboy Bebop together, because I watched it as a kid and I have all the nostalgia for it, but she did not. And so I was like, hey, let's watch Cowboy Bebop together. And she's like, sure, let's do it. We watch it together. We get to the end. She's like, what's happening? And I'm like, this is Vicious. He's the main villain. She's like, huh? Who?
Yeah.
And I'm like, he's the main, I guess actually this does make sense. You see him like 4 times before this. Yeah. Damn. Okay. And I don't think it's all bad, those changes in particular. I think there are other changes that were worse. But I actually thought some of that was okay. I want to kind of get into, do we think this would have been better or worse if it wasn't Cowboy Bebop?
That's a real good question.
Like, here we are with like this show that ultimately, if you ask me, like I've watched a bunch of it, it's not really terrible. Like the clips that people are showing on Twitter to dunk on it are the absolute worst moments in a show that is otherwise like largely okay. And a lot of those people blatantly even admit they haven't watched it. They're just dunking, and that's fine. Like you don't have to watch it. It's not necessarily worth your time. But like I watch a lot of sci-fi shows where people are, in a spaceship traveling around doing stuff. Cowboy Bebop is certainly a lot worse than The Expanse or something like that. That's, like
I really like The
Expanse. Fairly high prestige and, really thought out and, just more unique in a lot of ways. But on the other hand, like it's better than Killjoys or something like that. Like if you've seen any of these sci-fi original shows from the last few years, a lot of them are not very good.
It's better than Another Life, Katie Sackhoff. It's better than Night Flyers, George R.R. Martin. It's better than some of the bottom rung stuff of sci-fi. But is that a fair? I mean, people generally really like Cowboy Bebop. Maybe more than I do. It's considered, and that's part of why the internet's being so nitpicky about it. Because if you're in your early to mid 30s, you watched Cowboy Bebop as a kid. I watched it later on, but I know a lot of people just really attached to it, and they feel like their childhood's being tested or whatever. Maybe the lesson is just, don't take these things too seriously. But also, it's hard to say that in a time when every property is just being wrung out and being used for just really lame and bad purposes.
Yeah.
So it's tough. Where do you draw the line to defend your childhood? Is Cowboy Bebop the place to draw that line? I don't know.
I guess that's a good question. I don't really know if there is like a bottom rung for this, because it's also a live action, so feel like it's just kind of dragging bottom and we're just kind of settling. I don't know. It's COVID. That's my
Cowboy
answer for a
Bebop
lot of things lately.
on Netflix. I don't know. It's COVID.
Exactly. You get it.
Yeah, like I think on the one hand, I feel like some people might be a little more open to it if it didn't have that childhood, kind of touchiness quality to it. Although I will say, just for the record, that a lot of these people also haven't rewatched the anime. It's just pretty good. It's like an 8. It's not a 10. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
A couple of those episodes suck.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's kind of confusing with the overarching plots. And so I don't think it's wrong for someone to come back and try to work with that, because it's like you have a good thing with a lot of strong bones and good core concepts. And maybe there's an extent to which this could only work by being Cowboy Bebop, because they're capturing some of this cool of this old show and trying to like bottle it and reuse it with mixed success. So I don't know. It's like a part of me feels like it would be better received, but then a part of me feels like, they probably wouldn't have got all this budget. You know, a lot of this shit wouldn't have looked as nice if it was an original.
But how far does that cool go? I feel like it's a weird thing to pose. I don't know. Rule of cool doesn't always work.
And some of that is just Netflix. It's the Netflix business model. We're always looking for more and more shit to make, because it's not supposed to be like competing with Disney Plus. It's supposed to be competing with just cable and your real life. It's supposed to be like a utility that's just synonymous and everybody has a Netflix account. So unhappy people who like to nitpick science fiction are part of the target demographic for all of these networks.
Yeah. It definitely just seems like, too, Netflix is so cynical, and like they really want sure bets with a lot of the stuff that they make. And it's ironic because originally Netflix was kind of hailed as this sort of thing that would take a chance on something, like bringing back Arrested Development or making these like avant-garde shows that like other people wouldn't make or something, and just like, trying to like kind of like position themselves in a certain way like that. But now it's like they've become the absolute most safe bets network in a lot of ways. They want to know that your show is going to run for about 4 seasons. They don't really want it to run for more or less.
Not even 4.
Not even 4 sometimes. BoJack Horseman got axed.
Yeah, they're giving shows to chop like at 3, and I'll tell you, because I like Santa Clarita Diet. They owe Drew Barrymore and Timothy Olyphant another season.
Oh,
that great show. Let me tell you, fucking Netflix.
No, I agree with y'all. I'm just saying their goal is to like have a show that runs for right about 4 seasons when they sign you. Like they don't really want it to run forever, but they want like a decent amount of legs. And that means that a lot of times Netflix just makes these very cynical decisions about things. And so I don't even know what's going to happen with the future of live action Cowboy Bebop. They might just axe it.
They're going to be just making the Squid Game cinematic universe for the next 10 years.
Yeah, we're going to get like 10 more Squid Games.
Oh, God,
Octopus Game, Octopus Party.
They'll do
Creature Clash.
I mean, hell, Mr. Beast is putting $3 million into his Squid Game in real life remake. They'll probably make a Squid Game live action reality show thing. Ha! It's just like we're doing Squid Game, guys. Ha! They shoot you with a paintball when you die or something.
Have you seen the streamers doing ripoffs of Squid Game for their, video game Twitch stream?
That shit is terrible.
So whack.
That is like the wackest thing.
Listen.
One of the only times I thought Hassan looked legitimately uncool.
Yeah, listen. There's no way there's some shit that you just can't make cool. And speaking of that, you want to talk a little bit about nostalgia and shit when we get back?
Yeah.
Let's take a break.
Nostalgia.
Let's come right back.
We're back.
We're back.
You're back.
Let's talk about nostalgia. Let's talk about
nostalgia
because
media.
all of these things are just like there to light up a part of your brain as a 30-year-old. The stuff that you were into as you were a kid, come back to the theater and bring your kid. They've got to play with the same toys you're playing with. I saw this Red Letter Media thing a couple days ago, and they said it's just all about forcing your kids to play with the same toys you played with. And damn, that really stuck with me. Why are there no new toys in our culture?
Yeah, we do have a real problem with just rehashing of the same ideas over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And I think that part of it is we are in this kind of media trap where like there's these big budget movies that get made that are like kind of running our media sphere still to a large extent. Some of them are just wildly, unbelievably expensive, right? And when they make a movie like that, they kind of want like a reliable return on investment. And so again, it's like it's this cynicism that partially comes with like the high budget nature of some of this stuff. And I think if we had more just like low, medium budget, independent streaming services that could actually like get views, it would be pretty cool. But realistically, like this is the one, YouTube, where we are right now. Like,
oh no.
Yeah, no, like if you're an independent,
at this point.
You know, like if you're making like a low budget show, realistically, like there's a good chance it comes out on YouTube if you don't have anywhere else to put it. You know, if you can't get it on Prime or something like that. I will say Amazon Prime is the other one. Amazon Prime has weirdly positioned itself as the lowest common denominator of streaming services. They will buy rights to the worst movies imaginable. Like you get on Netflix and like they curate the shit out of that to try to make it like a pretty like relatively broad, but realistically like they want you to mostly find content that they think you're gonna like a little bit, and you know they don't want you to just like find a lot of absolute trash hiding in the archive.
Your data.
Yeah.
HBO Max is literally all just like high production, high gloss shit, like big budget movies, big budget shows. Amazon Prime has movies that cost like $40,000 and are called like Attack of the Sexy Killer Grandma and like
Killer Mama. Thank you.
Yeah, no, Grandma. And
Velocipaster is a classic.
Literally, Velocipaster is an actual movie that Joe and I watched.
Dusty Scruggs Rides Again.
Well, let's not move on past Velocipaster too quickly.
Let's not move past Velocipaster too fast. Yeah.
Velocipaster is a real movie that Joe and I watched. It's on Amazon Prime. It had a budget of I think about $40,000 or $50,000. It's it's better than you would expect.
It's about a reverend who gets bit by a radioactive dinosaur.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's all we need.
And yeah, he turns into a were velociraptor.
Yeah.
Feeling justice, and he kind of turns into a bit of an interesting guy over the course of that journey.
A lot of introspection.
It's very funny because they do their best. And so what's funny about that is that virtually anyone on any budget, if you have anything resembling a decent camera and a few lights and like a couple of people helping you, you can make a scene in like a bedroom look okay. You can find some decent looking bedroom that someone will let you film in for 2 hours. That's like nicer than your bedroom, you know?
That makes it sound like a snuff film, but
and you can like set up a shot and make it look okay, even if your budget is minimal, right?
Yeah.
And so like there are some parts of Velocipaster that therefore look okay. And this pertains to all of how media is created. So this is going to tie back around a little bit. But then there are other parts of it, like they have this ninja camp at the end that like where he goes to like fight these ninjas. And that's like, it looks like a very low budget Renaissance fair in a town of like 10,000 people.
I'm pretty sure they did use a Renaissance fair. I'm not going to lie.
You know, budget's complicated because some things really don't require it, and then other things do.
Is there anything that you saw on Amazon that you're like, this shouldn't even be on Amazon Prime?
Yeah.
The
Juggalo movies.
One, it was like the communist dinosaur something menace. Do you remember that one that we watched? We were so
Hang on,
high.
it might still be on there.
And I don't remember what it was called exactly, but it was like Soviet dinosaur something.
Soviet dinosaur.
That's like one of the most terrible
movies. Soviet disinformation.
It's hard for me to separate, you know, Soviet Dinosaur Revenge sounds a lot like Velvet Butcher Shop. These are all just very avant-garde song titles that someone from New Mexico came up with while slightly inebriated.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are movies on Amazon Prime that are so low budget and like so like art student levels of bad that they really just shouldn't be on there.
But it's okay because it's Amazon. Oh.
Yeah, they just don't give a shit.
All this stuff is, you know, it's deeply hidden. What I would suggest to anybody, find your local video store. I went to Videodrome in Atlanta, and the selection at your local DVD video stop that's independently owned beats the shit out of Netflix. Beats the shit out of Hulu Plus. It just is way better. It's handpicked. You'll find like, hey, you like samurai movies from the 70s about samurai revenge? They've got like they've got 15 of them. Like the stuff that you want to see. Oh, do you like Airplane? You like screwball comedies from the 1980s? They've got 12 of them that you haven't heard of before that are handpicked by someone. And you'll literally go home with an armful of tapes, and they're cheap. It's kind of rare. Listen, unless you live in Atlanta, odds are kind of low that you have an indie video store in your neck of the woods. And I guess that's why we have Letterboxd now. But yeah, go somewhere in person. If you've ever been to like a Barnes and Noble,
I was gonna say your local video store might be 4 hours away from you.
Yeah, I know.
In a small town.
Yeah, tell me about it. But yeah,
I do have one though.
Yeah, there you go. And if you're in a mid-sized
video store,
you're in a mid-sized metro, you might have one. And if not, find a friend, make a friend who has movies and owns them physically. Because the streaming era is for the birds. It's just going to be selling old stuff back to you with reverent background music, and it's not that great.
Yeah, the golden era of streaming services has definitely passed. You have to have access to like 25 websites to watch shit now. Everybody I know is in like a sort of informal club with their friends where it's like, I've got Funimation. What do you got? Well,
Yeah.
I got HBO Max. Oh, well, this guy's got Hulu Plus. You all swap, you know.
We're trading access to shows like Pokemon cards because all of these services, they're all trying to make stuff in bulk, and they're not making they're making one good show every 4 months. How many good shows are coming out? When's Netflix gonna make something that you're like, boy, gotta renew my Netflix subscription? There are people who really love League of Legends, but otherwise we're waiting for Cobra Kai. I don't know, Castlevania 6 months ago. What are we doing here? We don't know.
Yeah.
No
And
one
wasn't the
knows.
whole point of this like for a little while there, it was just like you just signed up for Netflix and it was like $8 and you got access to like everything. And now it's like if you want all the streaming services, that's like $50, $60, $100 a month.
Yeah.
It's gotten expensive.
You've got to get Criterion, and also there are indie streamers that are like, oh, watch movie, watch Nebula, watch one of these tutorial streamers. It's way too fractured, or if it's not way too fractured, it's everybody's got their hands out, and there's just too many hands and not enough wallet for everybody to go around. So it's this elaborate game of canceling and starting and stopping. It sucks.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. It's sad. It really is. I feel like, I don't know, everything's kind of going to shit.
Are there things that you like now that you think people will be nostalgic for in 20 years aside from Marvel movies?
Fucking Marvel movies. God damn.
I do believe that in 20 years though, people will be like, I'm Iron Man. No, I'm Iron Man.
Do you remember when Marvel was good?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Avengers Age of Ultron? Dude.
There's going to be a time because all these corporations, they all have to ruin everything.
Yeah.
So like Marvel's go on an incredible run, but they're going to mess it up like sometime in the next 5 or 6 years. Especially because now there's a new TV show coming out every other month. So it just takes one auteur to make a bold choice that just screws the whole thing up. Nostalgia is like that. And I don't know, I've seen I don't want to spoil the Ghostbusters, but oh man, it's so tiresome. It's just exhausting.
Really?
Let's make new things. So, like I said, if you really like Super 8, if you really like J.J. Abrams, if you really like Stephen King adaptations and Interstellar and people feeling mystical about things that were never intended to be like that, then if you just really miss playing with Ghostbuster toys, you may like the new Ghostbusters movie. But as somebody who, I only thought the first movie was okay and the second one was kind of whack.
Yeah.
People that deify that intellectual property have just always been a little bit weird to me, but it's just weird.
Ghostbusters is kind of incel media.
You know what?
Are we allowed to use that word?
I think so.
I don't know.
Well, let's just say, if you like Ghostbusters, you've got a lot of open dates on your calendar. And really, I do think
it's like a John Arbuckle energy. You got the polka dot bow tie.
Yeah.
You listen to Devo.
You listen to Math Rock.
Yeah. No.
You listen to They Might Be Giants.
Wow.
That's a shot that's fired.
Yeah, that's...
I'm describing a certain kind of nostalgia dork. You can't deny
I've been
it.
trying to find this movie that we were talking about, and I can't. Maybe you watched this in a dream.
Yeah, I watched it in a dream.
Soviet dinosaurs.
I'm telling you, it was a movie. It was just like it starred that like really like just schlubby weird guy who just like wandered around like trying to be like a lone wolf patriot or something. I don't know.
Weird.
So yeah, I don't know. Nostalgia is poisoning our society. I don't even want to speculate on what's going to be nostalgic. But actually, I will. Knives Out is going to be a movie that people are nostalgic for.
Oh, no.
Especially because Daniel Craig will be old, and people will be like, damn, you remember when Daniel Craig was, like, hot and fucking acting like badass? And...
Yeah, no, I agree. And then some people will be like, you know, he was kind of old in Knives Out. And they'll be like, how dare you? He's a national treasure. Oh yeah, I totally see.
How dare you?
What I wonder if Netflix will ruin it before people can feel nostalgic about it. Hopefully, the Knives Out sequel is better than Cowboy Bebop. Let me tell you,
I am worried about the Knives Out sequel.
That definitely seems like something where they're going to give the artist too much freedom.
That's a dicey sequel.
Yeah.
Well,
but it could work. It could work, okay?
It could work.
It definitely could work.
It could work if it's nothing like the original and just happens to be good on its own. But how often does that happen?
I also think they could... Don't link it back to the main original. Don't just, like, drag us back into the same situation. But I also think, like, the dead author character who, you know, ties the story, the old man who ties the story together, like, it seems like you could pry more into his backstory in some way for a sequel. Like, he probably has other weird ass secrets, right? Like, something like that seems like to me it could work. But if it's just like, oh, it's that same horrible family back in a room yelling at this nice young Latina woman that we all root for. No one needs to see that again for 2 more hours. Right?
I'm sure. I really hope that it won't be like Knives Out 2, Knives Back In.
Knives are back in.
Knives are back in, baby.
That's like the porno.
Every time I think that I'm out,
they knife me when I think I'm out. They knife me back in. Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds like a bad trip to the hospital.
I'll tell you what people are already nostalgic for, and it sucks, is The Sopranos, which you mentioned earlier. Because have you seen that Sopranos movie?
David Chase, I mean, here's someone who, because of his age, is always going to look down on television. And I didn't really realize the degree to which he looked down on television until I saw his interview after doing Many Saints of Newark, which is like a poor movie, but might have been okay as a television show. David Chase has got his own frustrations of the fact that, like, he's not that guy when it comes to making movies. And here's someone who's arguably the most respected television creator ever. You know, with a couple of competitors, you know, Vince Gilligan, David Simon, our guy from Mad Men, you know, there's a little competition, but he's an extremely rarefied air, and he seems to not really appreciate it.
No. Yeah.
He's a frustrated movie creator, and nothing can fix it.
I brought that one up for 2 reasons. First of all, just to show how fast nostalgia is happening now, like media nostalgia, because the Many Saints of Newark feels like the kind of movie you make like 30 years after the TV show comes out. Like, it really felt like just so indulgent. And like, yes, you remember The Sopranos. And I'm like, The Sopranos was on the air not crazy long ago. Yes, I fucking remember The Sopranos. Like, you
Yeah, then
don't
we got
have to
blue balled at the
remind
end.
me of what The Sopranos is. But yeah, like, I mean, that stuff just like happens faster and faster now, it seems like, and like that seems to be sort of an expectation of our media generation. And it's not always necessarily bad. Like, I watched Adventure Time Distant Lands recently, the like 4 Adventure Time specials that HBO produced that are all like about an hour long and like dive into like some part of the Adventure Time story that people wanted more of. And like in particular, like there's one episode that's about Princess Bubblegum and Marceline being in love, which was like always the thing that the show kind of like danced around and got in trouble for sometimes. And like HBO's like, we don't give a fuck. They're lesbians. Let's go. So I like those, but like again, it did feel like, dang, shouldn't we be doing this like 10 years from now? Like, we are already doing a nostalgic, indulgent look back at Adventure Time, and that shit's been off the air for a handful of years.
It is weird.
Yeah, these guys, nobody's even aged up enough to pass this stuff down. The toys aren't old enough to give to your kids. What are we?
Yeah, if you were actually a kid who grew up with Adventure Time, which by the way, those don't exist.
If you're a kid that grew up with Adventure Time, you're still a kid right now. Go back to school.
No, but serious, Cressida's little sister is 13 years younger than her. Okay, and so when we were first getting into Adventure Time in our early 20s, we showed some to her little sister thinking like, she's like 11, she's gonna love this, right? No, like kids of that age did not like Adventure Time. It was only for us ever. I just want to be clear about that.
I'm looking forward to those to people just learning that over time. But we're only going to learn about our culture through 50-year-old guys losing money on stuff that they think is going to connect. So that's cool. Love to see it.
But let's tie this back around a little bit, because I want to talk a little bit about generational expectations of media. And like, I think the Adventure Time thing is a good example of how our generation loves the deep lore. We love the like backstories and the, you know, we want the details. And I think that's one of the things that we see, and even like kind of I myself feel this divide when watching the live action Cowboy Bebop, is like, you know, I kind of appreciate that they're giving us more of that kind of vibe in some ways, more lore, more storytelling, more character development that's straightforward. But it's kind of interesting how, you know, Cowboy Bebop was a product of this time where you didn't have to do that. You could just have this cool guy ride around on a motorcycle for an hour and not explain shit in the 90s.
That's right.
Yeah, pretty much. Sometimes
like,
it do be that way, though.
What do y'all think about that change? And like, when do you think it happened too? Because I'm kind of trying to figure that out for myself now.
I just think that as budgets got larger, it's just harder to get people to invest themselves in, like, people's kind of bar for what it takes for them to get invested is higher. And like ambiance is maybe less important now than there is, or at least, you know, the powers that be think ambiance is less important than narrative immersion, and everybody's got to be connected, and there's got to be room for a second and third season, and there's got to be room for spin-offs, and everything is a little bit over-explained. And where it changed, I think, was the Dark Knight movies, which took the Batman movies, which were about a vibe, and made everybody really closely interconnected. And because Christopher Nolan's a really good storyteller, could get away with that, and now everybody's trying to do it, and they're not as good at it.
That's an interesting thing to point to. That definitely feels like somewhat pivotal. Yeah, especially because like, compare Christopher Nolan Batman to Tim Burton Batman,
Yeah,
which is like
weird.
some of the
eccentric
only
vibe.
great movies Tim Burton has ever made, honestly.
It's weird to say this, but when did TikTok come into play again? Like, what year was that? Was that around the same time?
Like this
Because
year.
it seems like stories have kind of shortened, and it seems like they're more compact. It's
Well, that's
almost
actually
like
complicated because that's been going on for a long time, but also that's changed recently, where it's starting to go back. There was this speculation for a while that everything would just get shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. But now it's actually kind of pushing back the other way somewhat, and people are wanting kind of like longer scenes, things to be drawn out a bit more, things to breathe a bit more in some of the media, and it's reversing somewhat. But you still see it in some things. But like SpongeBob was like the height of just like the media happens like this. And we've moved back from that like a half step. Like even now, if you watch SpongeBob, it's like jarring compared to some modern media in how fast it moves. Or like Family Guy.
yeah.
Family Guy is one of the most abrupt shows. And like I don't think that you could make Family Guy today for a lot of reasons, but just for the pacing
Because it's not
alone,
fucking funny.
yeah. But
They
just for the
cancel it.
pacing alone, I think you couldn't make Family Guy today.
Yeah.
I think they make ripoffs of Family Guy all the time. In fact, Netflix is filled with ripoffs of Family Guy, and they're
Yeah, but
worse
what's
than
the
Family
most
Guy.
popular like adult cartoon on Netflix?
Oh.
It's probably like BoJack Horseman, and that's like
Nothing
that's
like
like-
Family Guy.
that's like a 30 Rock. That's like long scenes of cringe, just going on forever into eternity.
We've got Hoops, we've got Paradise PD, we've got Chicago Party Ant, we've got I don't want to give every single animated show on Netflix, but if you've got Netflix, you know if you've watched a couple of these animated shows, they recommend 1,000 really bad shows. So I do
they
think,
grind out the worst garbage.
and Seth MacFarlane can be funny when he wants to be. They'd still make
Yeah.
Family Guy today, but just it wouldn't be the phenomenon it was for those 3 years when the original run came out before it got canceled for the first time. And everybody loved it
Yeah.
because it was really funny. But now it's much worse than The Simpsons. It's just a corpse that's going down the street. It's really gross. And weirdly enough, Family Guy, much like The Simpsons, is existing for nostalgia still. It's another nostalgia ghoul. Just something that's past its time and being dragged out. It's hard to watch, which is why I don't watch it.
It's a fair point.
Yeah, that's another one. People are already nostalgic for Family Guy. It's not even over.
How?
Like,
That's wild.
this show, it can run for as long as it needs to, but we'll probably wrap it up pretty soon.
I mean, first of all, I admit, and don't worry, but I admit to put that in the private area.
I guessed as much.
But listen,
I was gonna put it on screen 'cause it's funny.
Hey, look, the first episode, you don't know. Are we
It's true.
Yeah, because I would love. Let's hang out and let's talk about, because we've talked about nostalgia. Okay, nostalgia bad. What did people want back then, and what do they want now? I think that would be a good topic for us to sit and talk about. What do generations expect from their media, and how have expectations changed, and what makes something a cash grab versus just more of something that you like, and where do we draw that line? Interesting conversation for our cool premium hangout content.
Well, I think that's one of the things that is kind of a problem with a lot of the cash-in media, is that there's a mishmash of generational expectations that's presented in a lot of this stuff. Cowboy Bebop, again, great example of this. Some of the some of Cowboy Bebop is a lot more modern feeling. And like Jet's like story with his family, that's a way more modern story, especially as it continues. That's a way more modern story.
Really like that, by the way.
Yeah, that actually gets that actually gets kind of good, and like again, way more modern storytelling within that. But then like the woman who awkwardly and racistly hits on Jet, that feels like the past. That feels like someone's expectation from the past of something that would have been kind of acceptable culturally in mainstream media in like the 80s or 90s.
But
that
was the
scene
80s.
Wouldn't stand out if it was in an 80s action film. Right? But obviously we're 40 years past that and things have changed, except again, here it is in this show. And so I think there is this kind of like, there's a very interesting aspect to this way that like these cash-in media properties are made by these cynical boomers who still want to see themselves represented in it, but then like they're trying to appeal to millennials, and sometimes that combination of the two just comes off really fucking weird.
Yeah, this reminds me of Ghostbusters again, because you're taking something that was originally like a very specific piece of art, and you're trying to emotionally expand it to be a 4 quadrants. Kids love it, adults love it, families love it, guys love it, girls love it, ladies love it, everyone loves it. And
edgy teens love it.
Yeah, and you're putting
I don't like this anymore.
Yeah, you're putting so many things in the soup that the soup no longer tastes like anything. You've got beef and chicken in the same soup. Yeah, exactly. It just tastes kind of funky, kind of weird.
What? The consistency alone.
We've got the broths are intermingling on Cowboy Bebop. That's my verdict.
So I think some things have definitely changed for the better in terms of like modern expectations about media.
For sure.
And I think like we can in fact attribute some of that to better diversity in our media culture, which is cool. Like that's a good trend that like, media culture has gotten more diverse. Like Hollywood in the 80s was literally just white guys, and we've made some progress since then. It's not enough. It doesn't always feel like a lot, but it's enough that it reflects back into the media in these ways that are positive. And I think stuff like that's cool. I think on the other hand, everything having to be a universe, like we were talking about, I think that's kind of a problem. Like not everything needs to be a universe. And I get it. Like there are times when I want that from things so bad, so I get how like it's tempting to just like push things in that direction all the time, because sometimes you really want more. You just can't help it.
I wish that we had, and part of what makes this whole thing, it's all about artistic talent, because like who would have thought Dune? People would be like, oh yeah, Dune's the hot thing on social media now. As something that's just infamously weird and off-putting, and is just known for that. Is like synonymous with being a weird, off-putting thing for turbo nerds. But they put, they got Hans Zimmer on the bagpipes, and suddenly everybody's kind of like, hey, I'm kind of feeling this right now. This is kind of cool. And The Matrix here was a franchise just, everybody loves the original Matrix, but boy, the Matrix sequels just kind of infamous for being, kind of overdone, kind of overcooked.
Yeah.
One good trailer, people are like, hey, Matrix, kind of feeling it again. The public is so forgiving. You only need to make like one good movie, and people, if you do it well, people will be like, you know what, I'll check it out again. And that's why they keep doing it. Terminator, think of how many bad Terminator sequels they've made.
That series was bad.
Oh, the series.
Oh my God.
I think the TV show is overrated too.
That is, whew.
But they still keep trying with it. Yeah, there are so many franchises that they're just gonna keep dragging them out until they hit something with it, and we're just doomed to do it over and over until the end, and that sucks.
Yeah.
But good writing can fix any of these, I guess. Are there any? There's nothing that's too dead to ever. I mean, they made those bad Transformers movies, and they made a Bumblebee movie, and people went to go see that because they were like, "Oh, this one seems like it's good."
Yeah, you can't kill anything enough
Yeah,
for it to ever really die. Like they'll bring back movies from like the 20s and be like, it's back, baby.
New Casablanca, not that bad. You guys check it out.
Ooh, it hit different.
Really follows up on the original story in an interesting way.
Casablanca cinematic universe. Check this out.
Selena Gomez in it.
Absolutely. Machine Gun Kelly.
Machine Gun Kelly's in it.
Somebody remake the Marx Brothers movies.
Timothy Chalamet.
Travis Scott. Are we allowed to say Travis Scott on YouTube?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm still confused if he's canceled or not.
Oh, he's turbo canceled. They
Really?
got to make a new word.
Davidson,
Yeah.
also turbo canceled, also gonna be in it.
Who are we talking about?
Pete Davidson.
Oh, absolutely.
Why is he canceled? He's dating Kim Kardashian now.
He's canceled because he said terrible things about sex workers in a podcast this week.
Okay, he's canceled.
And then it turned out that he had done that multiple times.
You don't say.
Yeah. So he's turbo canceled. Yeah, but he's gonna be in it.
Jeez Louise. Why do we have
The
canceled
new
people in
Casablanca starring Pete Davidson.
here? Need The Rock. Make The Rock Humphrey Bogart.
Okay, wait. Here's my final topic for us to wrap up on, though. Let's turn this back around the other direction. If you could revive some dead thing that is currently very dead and doesn't seem to be on the radar of getting a reboot. It could have had a reboot before, by the way. Like if it had a reboot 10 years ago and you want to bring it back again, that's fine. But it has to be dead right now. If you could bring back some dead franchise that you do want to see the whole freaking world of and know that they were going to make movies and a series and all kinds of shit about it, what franchise or concept? It doesn't even have to be a franchise in its original form. It could be a single movie, whatever. What thing would you bring back and say, let's reboot the fuck out of this?
It's a good question. I actually don't know.
That's a really good question.
I have a couple of answers, so I'll start.
Okay.
One that Joe already mentioned this show actually is Danger 5. I would die for a reboot. I know that they might ruin it, but I don't even care. I love that show so much that like, please reboot it. It's amazing.
I feel like somebody would screw it up. I don't know why.
The odds are not necessarily great. That would be a tricky one to not mess up. But also, I rewatched a little bit of a TV show from the 90s that was a competitor to the Power Rangers that's mostly forgotten now, called The Tattooed Teenage Alien Fighters. And someone desperately needs to remake that show. Let me tell you why. It's because unlike the Power Rangers, these are disaffected Beverly Hills teens that are blatantly cynical, and they use that to their advantage all the time. Like they solve plots by being cynical as fuck, and it's really funny. Like these are just like some straight up like bad kids just like roaming around Hollywood making trouble. Like all of them have the vibe that like when they're not beating up monsters, they're selling Adderall or something. Wow. It's just, we need a show like that, but exactly like that, where it's not too cynical and too ironic, because at the end of the day, these kids are still like, they're kind of all right, and they end up becoming friends, even though they aren't at the start, and blah, blah. And so there's some like positivity to it, but there's just this like very realistic feeling teenage cynicism to this, where these teenagers are just like, nah, we're all 17 and we're immune to bullshit. We're just at that age where we cannot be bullshitted by anyone.
Does it have to be a series?
It could be a show, it could be a movie, it could be anything you want.
I would not remake Aristocats.
You would not remake it.
Mainly because of the racism. A lot because of the racism and the underlying alcoholism.
But what would you remake? Brandon, you got one? You look like you might have one.
I got one, and it's not a perfect answer, and people are going to say, hey, maybe that won't work today. They should remake the X-Files. Like, just doing that, you know, the world is more messed up and weird than ever. There's more weird, you know, what is true, what is false.
Yeah.
You know, what are people willing to believe in? And, you know, I guess maybe it would be quaint because people believe in shit that's weirder and dumber than werewolves and stuff now. You know, if you were to go out to somebody and they were like, yeah, man, the JFK assassination and aliens are real and there are werewolves, you'd probably be like, oh, like it's cute. It's not like conspiracy theories of that kind are like almost quaint. But maybe people would like that more. Like,
we have the internet now.
Yeah, I like this. I'd like someone to try to reboot the X-Files and see how it goes. See if it takes.
So I assume you mean like a whole new reboot, like new characters.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, listen, they can still be Mulder and Scully if you want, but new cult continuity, like complete new. Nothing that David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson made counts at all. It's a brand new story.
It's weird, but I keep thinking of like Jaden Smith as the lead.
Yeah, we can get Jaden Smith and Sophie Turner or Lindsay Lohan or whoever you guys want. Do everything.
God, what a combo!
Finn Wolfhard and Sophie Turner, the X-Files.
Bam.
There you go. Let's do it.
Nailed it. The Goonies.
Oh.
Just because, like, I don't know. It's nostalgic for me because I love the Oregon coast. I've seen that house a million times. You're not allowed on the property anymore.
They've got to get, I mean, you got to get the exact right person. Because, unfortunately, Hollywood, the Goonies, they're going to make it like Ghostbusters Afterlife. They're going to be like, this is the original chunk. And they're going to show face melting off, and they're going to slow pan around it and go, ah. Lots of reaction shots. This is just like being in the Goonies.
Suddenly it's Chris Pratt.
Oh yeah, Chris Pratt's gonna be in the new Goonies.
Right. No more remakes. We fucked it up. We've done enough. Wow.
Sorry.
Yeah, no more remakes.
No more remakes.
I can't believe there's gonna be a new Mario movie. We're going to end the show on that. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. This is Velvet Butcher Shop. It's a new show where we chop it up. A soft touch on hard subjects. That's what we bring here. And we're going to be back Monday through Friday, 1 EST. We're going to keep doing this and having a good time. And just tune in and chill with us. You know, spend an hour or so of your day with us. We're gonna have a lot of fun friends come by this week to hang out on the show, and we're gonna talk about more weird shit that we've watched, more things that we feel, more strange things that we've experienced, more stories about getting punched in the face, and etc. tomorrow.